In 1854, the United States Congress passed a law called the Kansas-Nebraska Act. This law had a direct and serious effect on the relationship between the northern and southern states. It did not cause the Civil War by itself, but it strongly increased the tensions that were already growing between the two sides. The law was introduced by Senator Stephen A. Douglas of Illinois. His main goal was to organize new territories in the Midwest so that a transcontinental railroad could be built. However, in order to gain support from Southern lawmakers, Douglas included a rule in the law that would allow the people living in those new territories to decide for themselves whether they wanted slavery or not. This idea was called popular sovereignty. It meant that instead of Congress deciding where slavery was allowed or banned, the settlers in each territory would vote and make that decision on their own. Before the Kansas-Nebraska Act, there was an agreement in place called the Missouri Compromise of 1820. That earlier compromise had banned slavery in all parts of the Louisiana Territory north of a certain geographic line. The new Kansas-Nebraska Act directly canceled that ban. It opened up the possibility that slavery could spread into areas where it had previously been prohibited for over 30 years. For many people in the North, this reversal of policy was not only alarming but deeply offensive. They believed that the federal government had broken a long-standing promise. In their view, slavery was supposed to stay limited and not expand into new lands. They believed the Missouri Compromise had set a clear boundary, and now that boundary was being erased for political reasons. The law seemed to give extra power to slaveholders and ignore the voices of people who were morally opposed to slavery. In the South, on the other hand, many people welcomed the Kansas-Nebraska Act. They believed it gave equal rights to all states and territories, especially regarding property, which included enslaved people under the legal definitions at the time. To Southern leaders, the Missouri Compromise had unfairly limited their ability to move west with the same rights as others. The new law seemed to restore what they viewed as a balance. By allowing popular sovereignty, the South hoped that slavery might spread into the western territories if settlers there supported it. This encouraged pro-slavery settlers to move into Kansas in hopes of shaping the outcome. The direct result of the law was a violent and chaotic struggle in Kansas. As both pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers rushed into the territory, tensions quickly turned into conflict. People on both sides tried to gain control of local governments and influence elections. Armed groups were formed. Fraudulent voting took place. Mob violence broke out. In several cases, towns were attacked, and people were killed. This period became known as Bleeding Kansas. It showed how deeply divided the country had become. It also showed that the idea of popular sovereignty, when applied to such a sensitive and dangerous issue as slavery, could lead to real violence instead of peaceful decision-making. The Kansas-Nebraska Act also had a strong impact on national politics. It caused the collapse of the Whig Party, which had been one of the two major political parties in the United States. Many Northern Whigs left the party because they opposed the expansion of slavery. In response to the act, a new political party formed in the North. It was called the Republican Party, and it was built mainly on opposition to the spread of slavery. The Republican Party quickly grew in size and power, especially among people in the northern states. The Democrats, who had supported the law, lost support in the North but remained strong in the South. This division between political parties based on geography and the slavery issue added to the growing crisis in the country. The law also affected the way people viewed compromise itself. Until this point, many Americans believed that even if the country had serious disagreements, those differences could be handled through negotiation and political deals. But the Kansas-Nebraska Act showed that some compromises were no longer seen as acceptable by large parts of the population. Northerners saw the repeal of the Missouri Compromise as a betrayal. Southerners saw any limits on slavery as an attack on their way of life. As both sides hardened their positions, the idea of reaching a middle ground became more difficult. More people began to believe that only a full victory for one side or the other could resolve the issue. Although the Civil War did not begin immediately after the Kansas-Nebraska Act, The law changed the political and social atmosphere in a permanent way. It led to bloodshed in Kansas, the rise of new political movements, the breakdown of older ones, and deeper distrust between the North and South. It removed a legal boundary that had helped keep peace for decades, and it replaced it with a system that increased conflict instead of reducing it. By making slavery a more urgent and unavoidable issue in national politics, the law played a major role in the events that pushed the country toward war. The law did not just create a new rule about territories. It reshaped how Americans thought about law, justice, equality, and national unity. It exposed how deep the divisions had grown and how difficult it would be to solve them without a major crisis. Subscribe to explore more of America's history.